just so they understand what I was talking about, the grand unified supersymmetry associated
Yeah,
with
let's
it,
let's show
which
some.
they're not able, what they don't have with the platonic solid. Everything starts with the tetryon. This tetryon decays. The first decay that happens with the tetryon is now it puts on two magnetic fields. But those magnetic fields, they begin to align themselves and connect. Now, if you really look at this, this is the same flow that causes the twist behind a rudder. It's the same flow that causes a twist when you're urinating. When a man is urinating, you know, it's coming out and then you see it braids out and then it comes back in and it rolls. This is
The
what
golden braid.
this is the golden braid. This is what's generated from the first decay of the tetryon. The second decay of the tetryon, it puts on now, it has four magnetic fields. And these fields begin to align themselves like this and arrange and creates this natural twist. And when they interact, again, they start re-putting things back together according to, I'll come up a little bit more, roll it out. This alignment, but also if I take four of these, I can build them into this. And this state of these four, and this is what I was explaining about on Rogan, that if you look at this like this, these look like straight lines and it looks like a square based on that interaction, but if you really look at it, it's all curved. All of these things are curved spaces, but these overlap, and as you can see in this model, you'll see that these are four tetryons with the decay taking place. And what happens is these four tetryons combine with another four tetryons, and they generate the conditional space that creates the nature of this Huntian that will have only six magnetic fields and six magnetic poles, but eight electric poles, which means that it has a greater electrical potential. So as these waves are overlapping each other, continuing out, then the next wave come in. But then what's interesting, the final decay is it decays down into six magnetic fields. And these six magnetic fields, now it's completely, it has a masculine center, but it's predominantly feminine. These things begin to align themselves in a similar pattern, 4 and 4. They can come together and create a magnetic or a feminine expression because it's expanding in the center, or they can be contractive and have, they're collapsing now the center, but what they end up creating, what these end up now creating are these structures, all a magnetic field that's building the lattice work that makes up what we would call the dark energy or the expansive part of the universe. But now here's the grand unified supersymmetry associated with it. You cannot put all of the platonic solids together and have them make any kind of sense, but all of these different pressure conditions, I can now take this system, I can align the other sides to it. Let's bring it all the way up here and roll it one more time. I can now take the first stage of decay, the Tyronians.
Why do you call these decay, by the way?
I say decay because it's devitalization. They lose their electrical potential, and they lose their electrical potential, and then they become more feminine. So it's devitalized in the sense of not having the same strength of spinning to the right as tightly as it would like to.
Like there's less pressure that's
Less
holding
pressure
it in
to
place,
it.
and as you release the pressure, it becomes larger and occupies more space, and so moves slower.
But all of these now create a grand unified supersymmetry that you do not get with any of the platonic solids or any of the models that they have. So when I call supersymmetry, I'm sorry, I should call it a grand unified supersymmetry, because that's what this does, and it ends up defining everything. Now, that's just the first step from there. Now,
So do you think that this is like the structure of the ether then?
This is
like
the
this
etheric
flat
structure.
plane. Okay, so basically the etheric substance is organized.
that makes these up.
And so there's the original tetryon is at the interface of these four bubbles of the ether. And
Yep.
then as you press them together, the fluid gets either squeezed out or somehow modified in order to create this grid that you've made of the hyperbolic objects, would we
Yep, the
say?
petals come out.
The petals.
Remember what takes place here with how a Huntian is generated.
In the hollow space.
In that
between
hollow
eight
space from the
tetrions.
the 8 pressures of the 8 sitting there, they create this negative space. So therefore when this pressure condition changes, this thing disappears, so it seems like a massless particle. But as these things, another pressure condition, these now, if two tetrions join to the electric sides, these are all electric poles because they're concave. It's higher pressure. So now you'll have two tetrions on either side of the Huntian. I may want to get it different. Now we see how it behaves as a particle by itself, but when together it creates an entire waveform. And 5 of these will come, 20 of these will come together and make a natural dodecahedron, which I showed on Joe Rogan, or an entirely other field. But when these come together, now you've got a crystalline structure. So if I bring 5 of them together, I'll show you what that looks like. Then 20 of them come together. And this is what I was saying before. This is where I was saying everything contracts in fifths, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 petals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 sets of 5s contracting, but you have 6 petals expanding from the center. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So everything contracts in 3 sets of 5s, and then they expand in 6s. Expansion comes from the center. But then I put 2 of these together, they make a natural icosahedron. So now when you have 10 of them together, they began to predict every potential wave field. And every one of these points is called a harmonic node. All of these harmonic nodes is where matter occurs. So it's able to predict all distribution of matter and tell any interaction that's going to happen. Or I can take 4 of these, and now they create this standing wave. And all of these are things that we've seen in nature. We've seen galaxies and everything behave according to these. We've seen things in the universe that behave like this. The platonic solids don't generate this. The standard model doesn't explain this without having to create unnecessary pieces, unnecessary things. So it's hands down, and this is just me defining the electric field. This becomes part of the magnetic field, which I would believe would be the dark energy causing the expansion of it. It's just happening at a higher pace, at a higher pressure condition that we can't perceive to a point. And so this is what I wanted them to evaluate. This looks like what we consider a photon to be. It's the aerodynamics associated with it. It's not something that should be ignored, but then these also decay. And their decay becomes like this. Everything slows down, everything goes through its transition. Now, if the standard model has a better description of all of these things than what we're doing, then I'm all for it. But as far as I understand, the standard model, the string theory, none of those things define what we've been able to do right here. None of them get to the linchpin where you can have 4 linchpins come together here, and then these 4 will bond here, but they're still creating the same tetrahedral structure. Same tetrahedral structure, or 5 linchpins together. Like this is the feminine side, like I said, because the feminine is always expanding. Whereas this is the contractive side, this is the masculine side. It's still a tetrahedron, but you see the dodecahedron has now been collapsed. So that's why we call it electricity, because electricity is now giving off energy. It's higher pressure. But these will come together and keep bonding and making these predictable crystalline structures that will keep growing. Will you bring me the 5 plane that's the same grade like that? So this is an electric field, an electric system right now. But a higher contractive electric system, like at the center of the earth or at the center of the sun, it will get to a point where it will plane out. But these planes, look at what they generate. And these structures just keep growing and expanding. But they will also continue to make the same bonds and keep growing. The crystallization never ever stops as long as you follow the geometry and follow the patterns. That's what I'm talking about. That's the prowess that if they have a better model than what I have, then hey, I will gladly put these things and retire them. But as far as I know, it's game over. It's drop the mic and, give me my Nobel Prizes or get out the business.
I thought we established that Nobel Prizes don't matter.
I know. They don't. But if people are getting Nobel Prizes for nothing,
It is $1 million.
Yeah, but I make $1 million in 2 days, so that don't mean jack to me.
We're in the wrong.
That's my rate.
We're in the wrong business.
But that's what I'm saying. So I don't want anything from it but to be able to benefit the world. And now we can utilize these things to predict all energy. We can utilize these things to re-engineer, or the materials engineering. Because before, now that we can model what hydrogen does, or how hydrogen bonds and interacts, now we can manipulate that. Whereas before, they've never been able to do that.
And ultimately, that's the goal, right? Like, a theory that unseats the one that we have right now is one that can account for that and actually make a prediction for what technology we can achieve.
I call this the mirror all shapes, because I call the tetrarian the tetrarian, the masculine, and since my wife is the feminine, I call these the mirror all shapes. So she represents that side of it. But if I collapse these, I'm able to now stack them. And they generate this space. But what's fascinating about this space, if I now take 6 of these, watch what they're able to do. 1 second. 1, 2, 3. And we have our 4th system come on. And you can see this looks like what takes place with a star and all of these opposing vortices that makes sense and continues to grow out from it. This is what the magnetism, or the magnetic, or the feminine side is able to do and grow out. They don't have this in the standard model. This we call this the world engine. Me and my wife, we call this the world engine. But this is the dynamics of what's taking place on a star. Here, go on ahead, you guys. Look at it yourself. That's the all shape. And I make 6 of them into like a turbine. And this would work like a wonderful turbine because it's smaller here, keeps falling, grabbing. How do you argue against this, or just walk out, or just piss off on it? Or if I take 5 of the linchpins, 5 of the mirrored all shapes, and put them together, they start creating these structures that here's 3 sets of 5 that behaves the same way that 3 sets of 5, 1, 2, 3. It always repeats itself. This system is self-referencing, and it's self-repetitive. So I don't get the resistance.
We've just gone through and looked at the way that all of these structures fit together. And I think
some of them. It's not all of them. It's just I've tried to bring just enough so that it wouldn't overwhelm and confuse.
But basically what we've come down to is that there is most likely an etheric substance that fills the universe. The etheric structure, or the etheric substance, must have a structure. And you have proposed a structure for said etheric substance, which can tile and combine in various ways due to expansive and contractive properties that allow it to change shape in order to create these different
composite entities.
I like that. And so I think that somebody who's watching this, or somebody who studies conventional physics, can look at it and dismiss it out of hand just because it doesn't follow the language that one would use for a conventional physics presentation, or it's not within the frame that they're used to thinking about the universe. But I think that there's something really, really valuable about A, the project of trying to understand what the structure is, and B, a presentation that lays it out and forces you to think about whether or not that presentation makes sense or is the right one. Because as long as we don't have people in the world that are working on this project, we will forever be stuck in a place where at the basement of reality is mathematics. And I do not understand the intricate details of the project well enough to say this is 100% so or this is not 100% so, but I think that the value is that it gives us a starting point for thinking.
When you examine the coincidence of this grand unified supersymmetry, because it doesn't just tile horizontally, it tiles vertically, it tiles volumetrically, and
Twist tiling,
twist it,
chirality.
it all has chirality, all of these things. So when you are faced with all of hundreds of coincidences that seem to tell a story, then it should push someone to do a greater dive in, a greater evaluation of these things, because it hits a lot of marks. It marks off a lot of the checkpoints. So that's all I'm looking for, is to hopefully, get a university that cares about the future, that cares about, what we're learning in engineering, and would like to examine these things so we can put it to bed once and for all. And that university that would work with me, I would give them an exclusive license to work with me, to where that any other university that wanted to come and discuss these things, because all of these things are patented, those universities are going to have to come and get a license from that university. So I'm proposing, in the amount of technology that we can build from it, the relationship that Hewlett-Packard had with Stanford, that's nothing compared to what an entirely new set of fundamentals, if proven to be true and put into application, along with all of the other patents that I've worked on, or the other innovations I've done regarding the, flight, regarding lighting, regarding nuclear waste, regarding, all of the things that I've done. I would be willing to work with that university and make that the wealthiest university on the planet, and the smartest university. That's what I would propose for even a small university or a large one. But first come serve. First come, first serve. Everybody else is going to have to come and get a license from that university afterwards.
And in some way, I like this because it's a very broad prediction. But basically, what you're saying is that understanding the universe starting from this geometry gives you the ability to create technologies that nobody else has made yet.
Yes.
And if that's the case, then there's nothing to argue with.
No. And like I said, we have our prediction models that work, and that's worked consistently, and would be more than willing to explore some of those things, and willing to share in what comes from that. So it's, take off the resistance, and let's grow.
I love that.
There's a guy who has a YouTube channel named Alexander Unziker. Do you know who he is by any chance?
No.
He did a really fascinating series about dislocations in lattices being used to show particle symmetry. And I think that one of the reasons that he wasn't totally satisfied with that kind of theorizing was because the unit that he was using was a cube, and he was trying to tessellate the cubes into these different arrangements. And so I wonder if some of your ideas wouldn't find a home in that lattice defect idea, because this was something that was studied back in the 19th and 20th centuries when they were trying to make sense of the ether and the structure of it. But they didn't, of course, again, they were trying to use the straight line cubes to make these different chiralities happen, and it was problematic for that reason. But it's some really compelling stuff, and he's got a cool series over on YouTube about it, and I think he's written some papers as well.
You guys reach out to him, talk to him if you guys know him or anything. I'm kind of done with doing podcasts. I wanted to do this because I wanted to give the audience an opportunity to actually see the pieces and all of that. But after this, I'm done on going out and trying to propagate and talk about it. Now it's just getting into the lab, working and building the linchpins out, building on our propulsion system, building on the neutrino system. It's time for to do the work. It's enough talking. Whoever was going to listen is going to listen. And if you have ears, hear. If you got eyes, see. But if you don't, then you won't hear this anyway. But you will not be a part of the future.
How do you imagine, if people are interested in these ideas, how can they contribute or collaborate? Is there a space that you can imagine that happening in?
Yeah, I mean, you can easily. My whole thing is like I said, this didn't come from me. It came through me, and I'm supposed to share it. I've written a book, 1 × 1 = 2. It's under tcotlc.com, so anyone can look that up. Or you can go to Terry's Lynchpins, and that's TERRYS, Lynchpins, LYNCHPINS.com, and you can go and have our site that has a lot of this information, a knowledge base, and you can do a really big deep dive. You want to leave a message and a comment, I will, my team will be glad to reach out and, and hear and talk about it. And anyone that really wants to be a part of the future, come along and let's do something.
Yeah, and we're of course on Discord, Facebook. Chris, one of your collaborators, is always hanging around. He's happy to answer people's questions.
Yes,
too.
Chris Seeley.
Yeah. So I don't know. Thanks for making this happen, man. It's been wild exploring your mind for the
brother.
last few days.
Exploring your minds and your hearts. You guys are genuine and earnest, and you care about this stuff. The real scientists.
Trying to make sense of things, That's
demystify science.
Indeed. Yeah, it's been really good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, brother.